Have you ever been hurt by someone you trusted? Maybe a friend, a family member, or someone close to you. Forgiveness is never easy, but it's one of the greatest marks of true faith. In Genesis 45, we meet Joseph again, not as the young dreamer in a colorful coat, but as a powerful leader in Egypt. Years have passed since his brothers betrayed him, sold him into slavery, and broke their father's heart. Now those same brothers stand before him, desperate for food during a famine. Joseph has every reason to seek revenge, yet he chooses forgiveness. This story shows us that God's grace can turn pain into purpose and bitterness into blessing. The story. When Joseph's brothers came to Egypt to buy grain, they didn't recognize him. But Joseph knew exactly who they were. After testing their hearts through several encounters, Joseph could no longer hold back his emotions. Genesis 45:1 says,
Then Joseph could not control himself before all those who stood by him. He cried, "Make everyone go out from me." So no one stayed with him when Joseph made himself known to his brothers.
Joseph wept so loudly that even Pharaoh's household heard. Then he said,
I am Joseph. Is my father still alive?
His brothers were terrified. They expected anger or punishment. But instead, Joseph said something extraordinary.
Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves because you sold me here, for God sent me before you to preserve life.
Joseph saw beyond betrayal. He saw God's purpose in the pain. Reflection and lessons. 1. Forgiveness begins with remembering God's hand in our story. Joseph's first words after revealing himself weren't about revenge. They were about God's plan. He said, "You sold me, but God sent me." That's a powerful shift in perspective. Instead of focusing on what others did to him, Joseph focused on what God did through him. When we look at life through God's eyes, pain becomes purpose. Even the hardest seasons, betrayal, loss, disappointment, can be part of God's greater plan. Romans 8:28 echoes this truth, and we know that in all things God works for the good of those who love him. For youth, it means even when friends hurt you or life feels unfair, God can turn it around for good. For adults, it's a reminder that every wound can become a doorway for God's grace. On. True forgiveness frees both the offender and the offended. Joseph's forgiveness didn't just save his brothers, it freed his own heart. Unforgiveness is like a chain that keeps us tied to the past. But when we forgive, we release ourselves from that prison. Joseph didn't pretend nothing happened. He remembered the pain, but he chose to release it. Forgiveness doesn't mean you forget or excuse what someone did. It means you trust God to handle justice and allow peace to enter your heart. Forgiveness is not saying they were right. It's saying you will not let their wrong define your life. When we forgive, we reflect the heart of Christ, who forgave us even when we didn't deserve it. 1. God restores relationships through forgiveness. What follows in Genesis 45 is one of the most beautiful scenes in Scripture. Joseph embraces his brothers and weeps over them. What was once broken is now restored. Forgiveness often opens the door for healing in families, friendships, and communities. When we humble ourselves and choose reconciliation, God's love flows again. For youth, maybe there's a friend you've stopped talking to, or a sibling you've held anger against. Start with one step of grace. For adults, maybe it's a family wound that's lasted years. Remember, forgiveness may be the first step toward peace. Forgiveness rebuilds what bitterness tried to destroy. One, forgiveness reflects God's grace toward us. Joseph's forgiveness points us to Jesus. Just like Joseph forgave his brothers who betrayed him, Jesus forgave those who nailed him to the cross. We are all like Joseph's brothers, guilty and undeserving, yet God still meets us with mercy. When we choose to forgive, we become mirrors of that same grace. Colossians 3:13 says, "Forgive as the Lord forgave you." Forgiveness isn't just something we do, it's something we live, because we've been forgiven ourselves. Conclusion. Joseph's story teaches us that forgiveness isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the victory of love over bitterness, faith over fear, and purpose over pain. When you forgive, you step into freedom. You let God turn your past into a platform for His glory. So, who do you need to forgive today? A friend, a family member, maybe even yourself. God invites you to release it, because He has greater things ahead. Just like Joseph, you can say, "You meant evil against me, but God meant it for good." Genesis 50:20. Key takeaway points. Forgiveness sees God's hand, not just human hurt. Forgiveness frees your heart to heal and move forward. Forgiveness restores relationships and reveals God's grace. Forgiveness is the heart of the gospel. Final thought, Joseph's tears weren't just of sorrow, they were of healing. When we choose forgiveness, we allow God to write a new chapter, one marked by peace, not pain. May we each learn to say, like Joseph, "God was with me all along."